that is
Nobody
scary. But you know what I have seen over the years is a need for technical assistance with no-till. We have a lot of. I had one guy last year. He called me and just chewed me out and said he had a 40 bushel loss where he was no-tilling. And it's, the questions start like what, how, you have so many questions to go from. And it's just like, he obviously took his conventional system and tried to go no-till with it, right? And so it popped into my brain that I should maybe have some more technical support for no-till. It's not easy. If it was easy, I feel like a lot of guys would be doing it. We have a spectrum of farmers up here as far as like how long they've been no-tilling, what type of no-till equipment they use. So we have like Jeff Stuck over here who's been no-tilling for how many years, Jeff?
Over 50.
Over 50 years.
Wow.
And Cade, he inherited a bunch of farmland. No, I'm just kidding.
Practices, not ground.
He inherited ground that had no-till on it, right? So you kind of were indoctrinated into it, right? Correct. Well, and then I had the story about Caleb all wrong. I thought, I had this really dramatic story that Jim wouldn't allow. Jim wanted all this conventional tillage. Turns out Jim used to no-till. Caleb went to college, saw the big farmers tilling, and they started tilling for a while. And then he, changed his mind. So I'm going to give these guys a few minutes. But that's why I wanted to have this dig-in meeting. I really wanted you guys to be able to ask some questions. We do a lot of these small grower meetings where we bring 12 to 15 guys together, and we ask like 1 or 2 questions, and then there's magic because these guys just talk and they just share. And they're like, yeah, I don't do that, but I do this. And it's not like a competition, but there is this, a wide array of how to do things. As you just saw Barry show you, there's lots of different equipment. So I want these guys to talk, maybe 5 minutes about your farm operation, how long you've been no-tilling, and then we'll start opening up so you guys can ask questions also.
Cool. My name is Caleb Kohlberg, and I guess I'll briefly tell our little no-till timeline. When I was in elementary school, my dad was farming full-time, well, not full-time, he had a full-time job in the shop and was farming probably between, it changed over the years, it increased, but from 5 to 800 acres. And he had to no-till it because he only had 4 kids, a full-time job, and that's the only way to really do it. How you gonna, with no hired help, it's just not doable. So that got him started with no-till. I didn't know what was going on back then. I was just a little kid, just barely walking around. So did that for a number of years. I was successful, actually. And I came on board, early years in high school, and just kind of like Colleen was joking about, you see the big farmers, Buren and Stamp and all these guys, and it works for them. Look at that shiny paint, and they're ripping the ground up. And I decided at that time that I want to be a full-time farmer, and we needed to farm a lot more acres. We need to at least double the size we're farming, and I think the right thing to do would be to till all the ground up. That just makes sense to me. Sounds good. So we did that, and so then I graduated high school in 2012. We're tilling ground full scale. We went from having 2 John Deere 4455s pulling 20-foot Great Plains, or not Great Plains, Kinsey planters, no-till, and we got a bigger planter and bought a big tillage tractor, and we had hired help and all that. And I went to college, and there I determined that doing this tillage is depleting organic matter, and I learned what soil is and why it's important. So I came back and I decided we're going all no-till and cover crops. So, and I've been extremely fortunate. I have a dad that whatever crazy idea I throw at him over the years, he just 100% goes with it. Okay, sounds good. So we sold the big tillage tractor. We bought a 24-row planter, and we were having all the crops sprayed by the co-op. And so we bought our own sprayer at that time, and I would call it 90-some% no-till. We've had years where 100% no-till, but last year we picked up a new farm, and it was tilled up the year before, so they made tracks in it. So of course we chisel plowed it to fix it. And guess what farm we made tracks in again? The one we chisel plowed. So that's our farm that we work up. It's anything that gets work usually gets work again. So, and here we are now, about 10 years, all no-till and cover crops. And he's just waiting for me to flip it all over again. But so that's a little bit about us. But
How many acres do you farm?
we're just a little over 3,000, and we do it with, like I said, we have one new tree. We keep the planting tractor new. The planter is always within 3 to 5 years old too, and that one tractor does all the planting. It does all the grain cart, and we have 2 other tractors from the 90s that are wore out tractors that we try and put 50 to 100 hours on a year, and we can do that with it's me, my mom, my dad, and then my little sister was running the sprayer, but now she's going to be a nurse. So anybody that wants to run a sprayer this year, let me know. So yeah, it's without doing no-till and stuff like that, we would probably need 2 large, 500 horse tractors, a new big Landau chisel plow, right, and field elevators again and discs, and we were all through that process. New sunflower field elevators, Landau discs, chisel plow, stuff like that. Seemed like you're working for John Deere in case. So.
My name's Cade Klein. We farm in between Decatur, Marcellus, and then on the east side of Marcellus. Actually have a lot of fields that border Jeff's. Back when I was a kid, we had almost every acre was covered with pigs. So we did everything. We faired and finished outside. But the early mid-90s, guys made a decision to either get out of pigs or go confinement. And basically, my uncle, who I farm with, he started to slowly get out of pigs. Any field that was a hog field, we chisel plowed, picked rocks again, picked rocks one more time, and then we cull mulched everything, and have basically been in the no-till since. So most of our land is highly erodible, and almost all of it is a stony field. So those were the 2 reasons he started the no-till. Wasn't a very big farm, so never had an opportunity for me to come on full time with him until he was ready to slow down. But 2 years ago, we took over everything, and basically every field that we've ever taken over from him has been no-till probably since throughout the 90s is when we basically transitioned to everything. Any rental ground that we've maybe picked up, which hasn't been a whole lot in the last few years, we would inline rip it and then hit it with a vertical tillage system type deal to kind of smooth it out, roll it, and then it's been in no-till since. So Colleen's paragraph about me said that we inherited a bunch of farm ground. I didn't inherit anything. We're really buying the dirt, but we did inherit the practice that was on those farms. So no-till to me is more or less all I know on the family farm. And then since my wife and I have taken it over, rocks are a big reason why he started. But we cover crop about 1/3, I would think, give or take. We do a little bit of seed corn with a neighbor farmer on shares. Luckily, we still do that in a no-till, minimal till environment. We do run over an accelerator on that ground, a vertical tillage system. And then about 6-8 years ago, some of our irrigated ground where we've had higher populations, we ended up buying the Kraus accelerator vertical tillage. We don't run it super aggressive, but we just wanted to size up that residue and get a little dirt splash on it because we started battling grubs real bad, and or slugs, I should say. So we had thin corn stains or bean stains. So, but corn bean rotation, a little bit of wheat mixed in there occasionally, and then we do have a small beef herd. So we run about 25 mama cows with the calves, and then our steers are all raised on a lot. But we do some rotational grazing, I should say, is pretty minor rotational grazing, but it's not on any ground that we actually put back into row crop production. So we do about 750 acres, 800 of our own, and then we do another 400 to 500 acres of custom work. That custom work is also no-tilled, 100% no-tilled. So take it away.
Hello, my name is Jeff Stuck. I farm down in Marcellus area, actually in the southeast corner of Van Buren County. We started no-tilling back in 1975. My dad ordered a brand new 7,000 John Deere planter when they first come out. It had the 2-inch wide no-till coulter and the cast iron closing wheels, and we were going to no-till. And we quickly found out the pluses and the minuses. If it got dry, you couldn't shove that 2-inch coulter in the ground. And our ground has just enough clay content that if it's any type of wet at all with the cast iron closing wheels, we were searing off the V, and the roots were just growing up and down the V and not out the trench. So through the years, we've tried several different things. We've run cover crops. Usually through the earlier years, we were running cover crops. Have gotten away from a lot of cover crops because we're to the point our biologicals are so prolific. I'm corn on corn, irrigated, 280 to 300 bushel yields. If you come out to my farm in the spring, it looks like I run a chopping corn head. It looks like somebody's harvested my corn for silage because all that's left is the stalk. Over winter, the biologicals, the earthworms break it down. So that's why I want mine fodder as small as I can get it so I can, as quickly as possible, return my nutrients back to the soil. Because I paid a lot of money. I got a lot of nutrients tied up in the stalks that are sitting up there weathering away. And I want them back where I can break them down and use them again for another year. And that's where when we first started no-tilling, well, we lost a lot of problems and had the typical problems of it doesn't work very good this year. Is that first year no-tilling, the residue breakdown, we had a lot of fertility tied up in residue that was not in the system breaking down and supplying the next crop. It took a while to get that biological, to get the earthworms moving, to get this all rolling. Now things break down very quickly. So I'm not afraid to chop everything up real fine. I run a 24-row planter. I run fertility-wise, I'm putting a lot of fertilizer around with a planter. Placement is a big deal for me. I run 22 gallons beside the seed, like a 3x2. I was heavier, but what I've been finding out is the more I no-till, the longer I no-till, the ground becomes more porous and my fertility moves quicker. Where I was putting on 30 gallons beside the row for years, all of a sudden I started getting row burn. I started burning some roots. Every year it kept getting worse and worse. And it's like things are moving more than everybody says they should. So I started backing down my fertility besides, and then I run a pop-up with all kinds of stuff on the seed and pick up things there, come back through. I don't vertical till, I don't do anything. I'm spray and plant and do it again next year. My tillage equipment consists of old stuff left over from the 70s. If we do mess up a headland, if we do have a rough spot, we'll go in and fix it and go on. So a lot of my things I do, it's a whole systems approach. So something that's not mentioned a lot is when you're choosing your seed, for us in this part of Michigan, it's going to be cold and damp no matter when we start no-tilling because we hold moisture. So I'm specifically looking for a seed that's very cold tolerant, that has very good tolerance to emergence in cold weather. And those are my first ones I'll plant, the earliest. So I know them are coming out of the ground. The stuff that requires it's not the best emergence, I'm going to save that to last, where the ground has had a chance to warm up and give me a head start. So it's a whole encompassing system with a lot of things to take consideration of.
How many acres?
We're right at 2,000 acres. Usually like a 50-50 split. Most of my irrigated is corn on corn, and some of it's been corn on corn for 12 years, and just building. My longest field, I have one field that's been no-tilled, and we're not talking any zero-till. We're talking 100% zero-till for like a little over 36 years.
So I can ask questions, or you can ask questions.
I got a bunch of them.
Oh, good.
So we talk about soil temp. Where do you guys start at? Because you are having other crops there. So what's your soil temp when you start?
For me, it's when the ground is fit. I don't even take soil temperature.
Same here.
I'm not, because I've researched and picked my hybrids that I'm going to plant that are cold tolerant. And so I know it's going to come out of the ground. So at that point, I'm You know, if the calendar, you know, the calendar's in May, 1st of May, and it's time to plant. If the soil conditions are right, we're running.
Same. We don't really do any soil temperature monitoring, but calendar plays a big date. Like everybody, probably we switched. We used to plant corn first, beans were second. Now all of our soybeans get planted first. Come back in and plant. We're hoping to plant corn that first week of May is really our goal. So.
Same thing. These guys both said basically with the amount of acres we're all trying to cover with probably one planter. When it's go time, it's go time. And that seed book emergence score is the most important thing by a mile. We don't look at, you know, drought tolerance and all the other, you know, how well it takes, you know, response to fungicide, right? It's about emergence, 100%. And I think Kate said too, plant your beans first. You know, maybe that eats up a little bit of time for it so you get a good stand, you know, with even emergence from good soil temps to corn. But beyond that, get it planted when you can. Yeah. Push it as hard as you can.
Second one was second application of nitrogen. Use Coulter or wide drop?
Wide drop. And why? Just for the sake of getting over acres. And I guess if you look into the 360 yield data, blah, 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 stuff, you know, about wide drops, I'm putting it a little closer to the plant. You know, that V shape of a corn plant, you know, a tenth of an inch of rain is washing it in at the base, you know, pretty well. And for us, it's covering acres in a day. We have the same sprayer that sprays the herbicides on our farm. We put a set of wide drops on it, and you know, we're doing 250 acres a day, 250, 300 acres a day at wide drop. So it's all about just getting things over in a hurry with a small crew. We're a skeleton crew on our farm.
Hey, what was the question, just so the audience?
What method or what application are we doing side dressing with, whether it's wide drop or Coulters? We have a Hagie sprayer, so we have the clearance. We're going in at about V8 with wide drops. So we'll have a roughly 90 pounds at the planter. Then we come in, depending on if it's irrigated or dry land, we'll come in basically and do a whole rate across a blanket rate across dry land and irrigated. Then we spin 2 applications through the pivot with nitrogen. So we'll put really no more than 10 gallons per acre through the pivot, but we'll do between 5 and 10 gallons, and we might do that twice. So, but we let our corn, because we have the clearance and the wide drops. Another selling point for the wide drops is 0 maintenance. You don't have bearings, you're not greasing it, you don't have disc to replace. Either one is, whatever you have, I think is going to work. But we let our corn get a little bit taller. We did it at V4 to V6 whenever we could when we were pulling it with a tractor. But when we bought the Hagie and got wide drops, we decided to let the corn get a little bit taller. And then we'll come in and spoon feed it with a couple rounds through the pivot.
Basically, we do the same as Cade. We usually wait to like V10 to V12 because we found out by accident, because we used to Coulter everything on. 1 year, through health reasons, we had the choice to either spray herbicides or side dress, and we had the first year we bought a tall sprayer. I said, well, herbicides, we can't grow corn with weeds, and we can always put drops on the sprayer. So we come back later with a sprayer, and what we found by going later with the same amount of nitrogen that we were putting on earlier is the nitrogen was there to allow the corn to finish out by going later, and it really boosted our test weights at the end of the year. And it's been confirmed for like the last 3 years by going later really has helped our test weight out. So on our irrigated, we'll go with a planter, come back through side dress later, up to 3 to 4 rounds with the irrigator, depending on what we're shooting for. And we're not putting a lot on. On my irrigated corn, I think I'm at like 220 pounds of nitrogen actual. So it's just, if the irrigator's running, we're putting some nitrogen, something through it just to keep feeding it.
So, Barry talked a lot about, spring management and using nutrients at planting. Can you guys go into that a little bit? I know you talked about side dress a little bit. I'm shocked that all 3 of you use wide drops.
Actually, I don't use wide drops. Mine is a straight. By the time you get to V10, V12, your canopy the row. So I'm just basically nitrogen 28 or 32% and sulfur right down the middle, because you're canopied. So you're not going to volatilize a lot of it, and it's not going anywhere except for down usually.
So if you guys are delayed a little bit with your Y drops or, you know, that system, what does your at planting look like? Tell us your secrets.
The spreader truck basically does whatever the soil test results tell it to do. We grid sample on 5 acre grids. Everything is prescriptive spread. And that's more or less just off of every, you know, we soil sample every 3 years. Every year, a third of the farm gets it. Planter, we actually are running like 2/3, 28, 1/3, 10-34-0 with micros in that. So we are roughly 90 pounds at planting, so that can get us through. We've cut our 2x2 rate back a little bit just for the sake of not having to fill up so much. So we do a little bit of urea. Last year we did a little bit of urea for the first time in a long time through dry spread. And I don't like to put urea out on top of the ground. It's expensive. But I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah.
Our planter, we're putting 55 to 60 pounds of N on with the planter, and that's through a 2x2 system, so it can seal on both sides of the seed. In that mix is a couple gallons of KTS for some potassium, like 7 gallons of ATS for some sulfur, and then the rest there's some borosol 10 in there, and then the rest is 28. And then in furrow we run like a 214-16 2S for a little bit of your micronutrients and a low salt phosphorus. So, and like these guys coming back with the Y drops. So.
Our starter recipe is 28 10-34-0, a gallon of ATS, a pint of boron and zinc each, 3 gallons of Gold Zone, which is a Wilbur Ellis product, and then a quart of Nutrio. So we're at 20-42, and then 3 sulfur on our analysis.
Yeah, basically it's planting so the 3x2, because I'm over a little bit because I used to put on so much. I run like 22 gallons, and it could be a mix depending on soil samples of 28%, 10-34-0, some sulfur, some boron, some zinc. Then also my pop-up that I run in furrow through Keaton's. I run like a 17-3, and it's got zinc, magnesium, a little bit of everything in there. And then also I do run, since I'm no-till corn on corn, I deal with a lot of grubs, a lot of things like that. I run some LFR insecticide with the pop-up. That's basically it.
Our in-furrow is an insecticide, just a cheap, like a Brigade. And we've been using Pivot Bio for the last couple of years in furrow. So.
No insecticide on the planter for us. Actually, we don't treat our soybean seeds either. We've been doing that for about 5 years, and we just inoculate. Last year was double inoculate. That was my dad who asked that question.
Can you guys talk a little bit about that? So I know in our area, we have predominantly switched over to planting soybeans first and early. I mean, with weather like this, I'm surprised we don't have soybeans planted right now. Like,
I would have called guys and asked if they wanted to, but I was scared they'd say yes.
yes. So I know Cade also deals with seeds, so he gets like, you know, to be in that world a little bit. And, you know, Barry talked a lot about today about how, you know, taking that insecticide out. And I've heard both of you guys discuss having grubs and slug issue. And so I'm wondering, like, Caleb, have you had any grubs and slugs? So you're the newest, right? Like your farm is the newest to go to no-till. Have you seen any of those issues, or has there been a change since you quit the insecticides?
Like I said, we've been like no-till cover crops for like 10 years. Yes, you know, of course fields vary and stuff, but we do not treat the soybeans, and we just, after doing it for 5 years, I don't think, like, for us, there's no other way I wouldn't even consider paying for it, you know. We've had Asiatic garden beetle, that was pretty devastating, and it didn't matter whether it was corn, it was full treated, soybeans, it didn't matter. They don't really care about a little bit of insecticide on the seed, so that wouldn't have, I don't think that would have made any difference. You know, that was devastating however you looked at it. It was just wherever you were at that year, location where they hit. But no, we're not looking to put it on this year either.
Yeah, so the guys that we sell seed to, probably 90% of them treat their soybeans, and it'd be a full 2 fungicides, biological, the inoculant, and also insecticide. I'm an advocate for it the earlier we plant. Seed corn maggot, we've had trouble with that going through the seed treatment. So some guys actually will put in furrow insecticide on their soybeans as well. A lot of that, you have to talk with someone smarter than I am, but the heat units to where the seed corn maggot hatches, flies in, lays their eggs, that second round or the round of when their eggs are hatching, they can be so bad once that soybean sits in the ground long enough, they're just vulnerable for an attack on them. And really you see the worst damage in a cover crop field, a dying cover crop field that was hit with a vertical tillage or like a high-speed disc to smooth it out. You'll see the most damage on that. A full tillage system, the earlier planted beans, you don't see that kind of damage. I'm not recommending a full tillage system up here, but the earlier planted, I think you'll see a bigger bang for your buck on the seed treatment. That's just
basically what we see the same. We run 2 planters, so we got a 16 row that we're dedicated for soybeans, 24 row for corn. We can be planting both soybeans and corn when the calendar says it's time and the ground is time, we're running. We do treat our soybeans because of the environment that we're going into. It's basically a hostile environment for it, so we want a little bit of best we can go there. We do a lot of our own research. You know, we do plots every year. We try different things every year to confirm or deny it works for us the way we farm, because what works for somebody else may not work for me, and vice versa. A lot of times when I planted like this year, I had a 18 variety different seed corn plot for yield, and when I do a plot, I will go from this into the field, and I want to go down through the hollow, up over the hill, and end up at the other end of the field. So I have a good test of every hybrid. And every year, the seed salesman says, well, this one's going to be the best, and it usually ends up being my worst. So,
I don't sell them as seed.
No. So you really got to do a lot of your own homework to find out what works in your system. Is what it comes down to.
Couldn't agree more.
So I got a question for you guys. So being in a no-till situation, I've watched farmers go all no-till and then switch out because of dealing with like sumac and dogbane and nettle. How do you deal with those ones that continuously grow?
You cut the sumac off with the grain head. Normally it's not too big. We have a couple patches like exactly what you're talking about. Horse nettle. We have only have 2 fields that are bad with that, but a dicamba type product, in corn status, take care of that. Really, we never sprayed dicamba for beans on the farm, so that'll take care of those. But herbicide, the sumac, yeah, we definitely have some patches that's the fastest growing thing out there. But
you cut it the first year, it's this big. The second year, it's this big.
It's
the
like there's a patch of it out there. Yeah, I actually combined around some beans this year of a patch maybe the size of the screen, because I just didn't want to change sickle sections if it were to snap them off. But there's always a challenge to everything. So most of the guys that are tillage or they're no-till and then they go back, I think they were discussed earlier. They don't give it time. They don't change their practice. They're not thinking long-term. They're just thinking short-term. So it's something that you kind of have to jump in with both feet and be committed to it. And when we were I say we, at this time, it was just basically my uncle. I wasn't really involved in anything, but when he would take over farms that were a tillage system, it seemed like it would take about 3 to 4, maybe 5 years to where you would see a little yield drop, and then it slowly comes back up as you let that ground kind of turn itself, transition into no-till. I think we speed that up with cover crop, and we speed that up with the wheat in the rotation, but Colleen doesn't like to hear, but wheat is terrible to raise in Southwest Michigan. So it's hard to be profitable with wheat, even with the benefits to the next year corn crop. But those are ways that if a guy's transitioning into no-till, I think that you can speed up that transition period of a few years and take it down into a couple, maybe.
I think there are weeds that are worse in conventional till and some that are worse in no-till. So I don't think it's like, if you're on no-till, you're going to have weed problems. I think when you till the ground up, man, you're like making the ground perfect for all those weed seeds he has on top, working them in. And I think a lot of fields that have a particular weed problem or maybe even an insect problem, I think maybe it's not just no-till or conventional till, some of it's even fertility. You talk about like slugs and stuff like that, and I think these guys both come from hog area where phosphorus levels are higher, and guess where you have slugs, where you use manure and stuff like that. So I think a lot of that's fertility too. So it ain't just why no-till that makes slugs. There's a lot more to it.
Brooke.
Can you talk more about your soybean systems? Like what planters do you use, row spacing, seeding rates,
Sure.
and, like herbicide programs?
Yep.
I've run into where like you end up spraying beans 3 times because they grow slow. So like how do you make sure you only have two passes at the most?
We are about a third of I'd say about half of our soybeans get planted into a cover crop, not necessarily green, but we'll typically spray it, and then we're not too far behind the sprayer with planting, so it's like a greenish plant. 30-inch rows, population, we always were at like 155 for years. We used to have a no-till drill. We would plug every other hole, make it a 15-inch planter. Then we had a 12-row planter at the time and a 15-foot drill, so we just ran both of them. Never saw a big decrease in yield with 30-inch beans, and it was twice as wide, so we basically just ditched the drill. It's a lot easier to maintain. With irrigated ground, 30s for row spacing for white mold, stuff like that. But we're all 30s. Planting populations, we've got them down to about 125 to 130. Some guys, 125 is about as low as most guys will go. Herbicide, we're doing a pretty heavy pre-emerge up front, and then we're coming back with some more residual and basically enlist duo in the last couple of years. But we tried to break it up. So we raised non-GMOs for a few years just for the premium, but we had way too many weeds. I kind of tell people like our sprayer is our tillage pass for taking out weeds. We have to have a good pre-emerge, or you have to have a nice thick cover crop to choke out any of those weeds to start with. But 30s, 125, and don't hold back on your residuals.
We plant all of our soybeans in rows with a 30-inch planter, 16-row planter. We used to do the same thing as had a no-till drill, plugged every hole, and you hoped and prayed, and you dumped a lot. Even we had scales on the drill, you couldn't get it very accurate, tune it in. We're down to 130 to 140, depending on the weather and what time we're planting. We usually go in and we'll do our burn down pass. We go in with like a Roundup, a Sharpen, and a shot of Pursuit, so we got some residual laying in there. We plant Liberty beans. That's what we found that we can control our mare's tail with, because mare's tail in our no-till is one of the biggest problems we have. So we go in with a hot rate we don't cut rates on any herbicides. That's where you run into problems with getting escapes that you can't get control. So we'll go in, do our burn down, plant, come back in, and with a late shot of Liberty, clean everything up, and usually we're pretty good to go from there on out.
90% of our soybeans, or about 80%, are planted with a 24-row, 30-inch planter. We have a grain drill, Great Plains, that gets pulled in an old John Deere 4455 that if it plants a few hundred acres a year, that's all it does. And that's on twin rows for a 10 and then 20-inch gap. As far as herbicide, cover crop acres are the easiest with soybeans. We plant the soybeans and then we terminate after we plant them, like into an annual ryegrass cover crop with dicamba and glyphosate. And that's the best case scenario where you don't have to probably come back. If there's no cover crop to blanket the ground for future weeds coming later season, we almost always come back a second time with glyphosate and dicamba a second time. But yeah.
couple of you, I forget which one, mentioned that you were looking at some biologicals. You put some of that in furrow or on seed and stuff. Can you go through what you looked at and what your results are on some of those products, those newer products?
Yep, we use Pivot Bio, not on every acre. We've had mixed results. The company claims that we can cut 40 pounds. You can't. If all the stars align and everything's perfect and you completely change your whole system into an all biological system, I think you'll see the results that the marketing team for these companies tell you that you can see. But Pivot Bio is kind of an added-on product. We've seen a little bit better plant health. We have seen where, it doesn't run out of steam if we get a big rain event on some of our dryland acres. But with the way nitrogen's come down, the pencil kind of pushes back toward maybe split applying a little bit more N than using two biologicals. The other biological is within the seed treatment, a Pioneer seed treatment, and that's part of the green paint that you get. So it's a biological fungicide on that. The biological market to me is overwhelming with as many companies that are coming out. We went to the Commodity Classic and it's just all biologicals. And it's a whole bunch of stuff that you can't pronounce, but they promise you that it works. So it's kind of a slow adapter to jumping in with both feet on the biological market as of now. But there are some products that do strike interest for sure. If you are.
We really haven't delved into the biologicals yet. We are going to start, but the way we do things very methodical and slow. We're going to start adding a little carbon on a few acres and testing and seeing if we see any returns, what things like that. There's a lot of snake oils out there. There's a lot of people selling products that claim they're going to give you 5, 10. Well, if I bought all those products, we couldn't build enough beds because, but a lot of times more than likely they don't work or don't pay for themselves hardly, let alone return any profit.
We've played with a couple like products you put in a burn down or in the spring. I think extract is one. It's like a gallon of ATS plus some biologicals. There's been some cool results from that. Some yield gain. Multiple farmers in our area have done it. And then is it Advancing Eco Agriculture? Anybody here that's into the regenerative stuff probably knows about them. That I've tried there. They have a really, really expensive product to put over. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's basically I think it's soil primer. And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that like $60 or $70 an acre? Yeah. And it didn't pay for itself, so we didn't do it again. but the extract is pretty reasonable in price, and that's in no-till. It helps break down the residue. That's been something we'll probably try again.
Yeah, that's one product that we're going to look at too is extract. Our nutrient dealer just told us about that this morning that we should be using it. So, but we have sprayed a Meristem product. We just are starting with that. It's called Excavator, and it's supposed to help break down crop residue. So I'm optimistic about that, but so far we haven't seen it work the way that they claimed. But I'm not giving up on it, and it seems to mix well with any herbicide. So we haven't had any problem as far as mixing goes.
So I'm still old school. We spray 28 on top of corn stalks.
Don't do it.
Just band it instead. One of the plan.
Can you repeat the question?
It's spraying 28 on stalks to help break it down. I don't think that it works. It's expensive to do, and I think that we lose more nitrogen than anything. So I shouldn't say don't do it. I don't do that. If you guys do.
No, I've tried it several times and never seen where it helps.
Yeah, we spray the Haggy, so I don't want all the nitrogen coming right back on the machine either. If it's on the machine, it's not on the plant where it's supposed to go.
On you guys' soybean program, do you guys use starter fertilizer?
No.
What's the question?
Starter fertilizer on soybeans. As far as an in-furrow? Or
No.
A 2 bites.
We were using a planter, so I didn't know if you did it.
Yeah. No, we played around with some nitrogen before, messing around with it, but it was more or less when we were planting corn and we had leftover product and we planted our beans second. We just played around, but no, soybeans just get stuck in the ground. Like I said, in early, and this isn't really my farm, it's some farmers we work with, the in-furrow, they might just do an insecticide to help with seed corn maggot.
We've played around with it several years ago. Our soybean planter set up for 2x2 plus on furrow. Tried a lot of different combinations. Soybeans are pretty finicky when you start adding fertilizer. About a break even is throw everything except for a simple 2 gallon an acre pop up. But you're just paying for itself is what we found. 3 gallons hurt. 1 gallon didn't show anything. 2 gallons, you had a little better nodulation, things like that. But soybeans, we found, are pretty finicky when you start trying to put fertilizer real close to the seed and germination issues arise.
About the same deal. We play with it all in furrow, 2x2. I even wide dropped soybeans one time just for the hell of it, because there was a soybean field next door where I just got done doing some corn and just didn't pay.
How do you manage pH? Any pH issues on since you're not tilling the soil?
Just red lime.
pH issues. How do we manage it? I would say across the board. I don't know if it's just not doing tillage or maybe little by little being more responsible with nitrogen, maybe not flushing the pH out as much. I think that we're a little more stable in that sense of not having to lime as often. I don't know if these guys the same experience, but I don't know if I could equate it to 100%. Like I said, being more responsible, not putting on 200 pounds of urea up front or something and flushing the pH out. I'm not sure, but it's definitely we're not liming as often.
We sample, like I said earlier, everything we started out at 2.5 acre grids probably 15 years ago. And I feel like we got everything kind of even, up to snuff in the good areas and right or up to snuff in the poor areas, and everything else maintained in the good areas. So we switched to 5 acre grids, and we basically just go off of recommendations from A&L, and everything is variable rate, whether it's lime or anything as far as a dry spread, lime and fertility. So you've no-till longer than I have. Maybe the organic matter helps pull that lime down in versus having to work it up. That has been an argument with some guys of, well, when you spread lime, you have to work it in. It's just not an option in a no-till system. We never worked to ground as far as a chisel or anything, flipping it over. One of our neighbors asked if he could borrow the chisel plow, and I had to cut little trees out of it to move it out of the barnyard. It was, I don't know what kind of tree it was, but it was like this big. I was like, man, we gotta cut it out. I was like, what do you mean you have to cut it out? I was like, we don't use the chisel plow. So we just leave it. We just go off of recommendations on the soil test.
Do you reduce your rates on lime because you're putting on the surface, you're not incorporating it?
Just variable rate.
I'd say the only thing we do different is 4-inch
You
samples
don't touch
versus
your rates because you're
Not cutting rates, huh?
not incorporating.
What I found on my ground is you want to go more often and less tons per acre. I wouldn't want to go out there and put 3 to 4 ton an acre on lime. But what we are finding is our ground is so porous, things move. Things are moving in our soil that the professionals say should move. Our lime, everything was on a big kick. There's a big kick a year or so ago about stratification. We pulled a lot of soil samples and things like that. And yeah, you're going to have a dense layer up top, but that's where my dense layer of roots are in my corn plant. My roots that tend to go deep and down are the ones that are normally looking for water. My shallow roots with all the hairs on them, things like that, looking for the nutrients. So we haven't had much of a problem. When it calls for lime, we put lime on and then continue on.
What's your source of lime up here? I had a couple of questions where it was mostly dolomitic lime right close by.
We can get dolomitic, we can get high cal.
we need high cal around here.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that I've got a really good high cal quarry right down the road. So that's always made it, I felt like, easier to manage the lime. But I didn't know.
Yeah, we can get both around here. And I have some ground that want dolomitic, that call for dolomitic, and I got some ground that calls for high cal. So you go off from soil samples, and you pull soil samples, and that's what you go by, basically.
how deep are your soil samples that you guys are pulling, and do you pull them yourself or do you hire it out?
Usually hire everything out now. Time factor, that's one of the things we do. One of the very few things that we hire out, but we're making sure they're pulling 6 to 8 inches, and then we make sure they pull, 3 and 4 inch sample. We want a good overall view of what we're seeing. See if we're seeing any stratification. See if we're getting nutrients down deeper. So we're making them pull a lot of soil samples.
Same thing. We hired a company in Three Rivers, Great Lakes Seed Solution, and then Jeremy Walker as Walker Precision Ag. Those two guys are who do a lot of the soil sampling in our area, and everything is still 6 inches. Like I said, on 5 acre grids for us.
Same thing. It's hired out. We've always been 6 inch samples, but recently I've been getting really interested in this Neil Kinsey stuff. He talks about soil fertility, and it's pretty interesting stuff. And he talks if you're no-till and you plan on staying no-till, now he's talking to 4 inch samples. So probably in the future it might be 4 inch samples instead of 6.
So I got another question. Manure, how's that incorporated? Do you use it or not?
Very little. We put a bunch of chicken litter on last fall, and we did some the spring before, and seemed to have good results. But we didn't till the ground because we put it on. If that's your question, we just incorporate it over top and business as usual.
We will spread dry bed pack for cattle. We don't have enough. It's a bonus in the few acres that we spread it on every year. But I do all the spreading, so I try to go as fast as I can without the manure spreader breaking apart, so we don't have straw piles everywhere. If we do end up having something fall out, it's run out there with a loader tractor and fluff it around, or we'll scratch it up with like a vertical the accelerator. So, but that's the only manure we have. I would like to get in a chicken manure. We have quite a few lakes by us, so I don't know. I can blame the hog smell and all the hog guys around us, but the chicken litter, that's a little different smell. And as much as people don't like commercial fertilizers, they really aren't going to like the smell of manure at their lake cottage.
Basically the same as him. I quit using chicken litter several years ago because of complaints from the neighbors, and even though it's my right to do it, it's like, well, to keep peace in the neighborhood. But we just spread it on top at not heavy rates. When you're doing litter, you're not wanting to put a heavy rate on it. And we always had our litter tested. Once it was delivered to the farm and piled, we would sample it and send it out and have it tested, because 9 times out of 10, when the test results come back, they were way different than the test results they give us when they sold us the litter.
Is it more or less?
Both ways. It can go either way. So it's a good thing. There's a lot of good stuff in litter, but it's highly variable, is what we found.
From experience with other guys too, if you can't get it spread evenly, it can throw things in a whack.
So if I wanted to start no-tilling this spring, and I have ruts in my field, I probably can't do it, right? So what would your advice be for me to get me over this hump? Caleb, you talked earlier about fields that you recently acquired, right, are ones that you kind of keep tilling. What are you going to do to get those fields to no-till? Can you walk through some of those?
Yeah, Colleen's talking about how to transition a field to no-till. Basically, how don't you make it a mess in the fall, make ruts a foot deep. I guess plan a shorter season hybrid, even if it means cutting a little bit of yield the first year and get it off in a timely manner, so you don't rut the field up. And usually a year or two of no-tilling a field, you're going to build the soil structure, and you just won't have that problem being wet in the fall. It was a wet fall, this last year, and like I said, the only farmers we made tracks in were the ones that we tilled that spring. That's a reoccurring theme. So it would be short season crop, get it off, make it the first field you harvest, so then you can transition it into that no-till process.
Tillage begets tillage.
Right. Oh yeah, the tilled fields love to be tilled.
Ruts in the field this spring and you want to go to no-till, I I guess our experience in the past was to run a chisel plow and smooth it out, and then get everything fit. I think today with his equipment's improved a lot since when we were taking over fields and stuff, taking them out of hog production. That land roller really helps smooth things out, but it makes a nice slick surface for water to run fast, so you have to be careful on the erodible ground. But yeah, if you have ruts in the field this spring and you want to switch to no-till, I would think start with a clean slate, chisel it, fit it, plant it, and then don't ever touch it again with tillage tools, except for vertical tillage in some cases for us.
Would you till the whole field or just till the ruts?
I'd probably till the whole field starting over. I think. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on that question. But advice.
I would personally go in and rip up the areas that were a mess. I have actually some personal areas this year. It was wet when we were running. We try and keep our grain cart on the headland. There's only two of us, my son and I, so we don't have a chaser person not running the semi. He's running the combine. I'll come back and dump the grain cart in the semi and off again. So we don't have ruts across the field per se, but we got headlands that are looking real pretty. What I did a couple years ago, especially we had a dry year, and I'm looking for overall return off my whole field. Yeah, it's nice to get that 250, 270 yield monitor yield out in the middle, but when you make that first pass around the outside of that 40-acre field and you got 4 acres that basically yielded nothing on 8 rows, that takes your overall yield down real quick on the whole field. Had to think about it a little while, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't do any tillage, so my tree lines, my wood lines, the trees are just sending roots out across wherever they can go to get fertility. In a dry year, they're running out. So I bought an old cheapy 3-legged ripper, straight shank ripper. Now I go around and rip anything close to fence rows with trees in it. This spring, I think I showed you or sent you some pictures where I ripped along some trees where I've normally been farming, and the roots were as big around as my arm that it was cutting in two. So it's like, now this year I actually had better crops underneath the trees than I did out where I did most of the turning on the headlands, because I cut them trees off and they aren't robbing me anymore. So personally, I would go in with my little ripper, rip up just the areas that I've tore up, get them level, roll it back down so it kind of matches the rest of the field, and plant it.
Andy?
I'll add something to that. If you're gonna no-till, you cannot make exceptions. If you're gonna get it in the no-till and make it right, you can't go out there when it's wrong. You can't do something to try and get it done. You either wait until it's right, or when it's right, you do it. But if you go out there when it's wet, you're gonna have a problem.
Yep. The ground does get more forgiving the longer you stay in no-till, but with that being said, there's no reason to push it if you don't have to and take the chance of wrecking it. We do 160 acres of seed corn every year, and everybody said, oh, you'll have to tear it up, you have to tear it up. And that farm's been no-till for 25 years. And last year they came when it rained the day before, and they actually finished picking that in the rain, and they left some tracks. The dump cart guys did run kind of all over the place. You're not going to get them to stop when it's a custom guy. We'll hit it this spring with either the accelerator or a Turbo Max vertical tillage tool, and we'll be fine. Like Jeff, maybe toward the end of the night when the wet bins are all full and everything, we will dump on the go, but for the most part, we don't really dump on the go that often. Picking corn, everything's on the headlands, so you do get some ugly looking headlands right by the field, but we have an inline ripper that we will bounce around in the spring and just take out some compaction, but we've been no-till for so long that those fields are that much more forgiving.
I think what the gentleman in the back was alluding to is it's a system, whether it means you have to harvest 27% moisture corn to get yourself in the field 10 days earlier so you don't have a wet harvest, ruin your soil, or plant a shorter growing season corn, whatever it is, you have to totally change how you farm. because like you said, you can't be out there when it's wet, or the whole system is, you might as well throw it away. You know, we wouldn't be no-tilling if every year we had to rip up half our ground. It would be we'd just give up and say we gotta still wall every year, I guess. So it's a system. You just change the way you farm overall. Different mindset.
To commit.
You can commit to it, yeah. And we like to, on the 27-28% moisture corn thing, we like to be the first ones picking corn of the year. So.
Can you expand on some of the other advantages of that though too? That is part of the system that I hear time and time again, that farmers are getting in the field earlier, and that adds to the overall system benefits too.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to pick corn 24-25%. You can dry corn when it's 80 out a lot better than you can dry corn when it's 35 out.
Yeah. So, and what else does that do to the overall system, you think, the breakdown of the stocks?
Yeah, your stalks are getting into the ground quicker. The material is, so I think it's that much more weather can get into that stalk.
I think there's some benefits to a green stalk breaking down.
Right.
Too,
Caleb is always the first to pick. He sends Snapchats, and I'm like, oh man, you're not supposed to look at your neighbors, and he's not even a neighbor. He's 35 minutes away, but I'm like, sucker, now I got to go do something. So he's good at pushing, getting you motivated to get to work. Good.
I got $1 million question. Are you making more money than you would be if you were tilling?
I believe so. Jeff and I were talking earlier about fuel consumption, and it's your number to tell, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think he said he was approximately 11 gallons per $11 per acre, and I think that even might be high when it comes to wheels going back and forth on your field. Now, we do run irrigators on some diesel generators. That does take quite a bit of fuel, so I think, and you had that factored in there, you said?
Yep.
So,
we had everything factored in except for like trucking. And my cost of, I took last year, my total diesel for all my farming, other than trucking and not in propane, $11.28 is what it cost me for all my total fuel. That's for the planting, that's for burn down, that's for application, my spraying. On some of my irrigated, I may go over it 5 times with my tall sprayer, putting on fungicides and Y dropping and things like that. That is also for my irrigation. I have one irrigation runs off a big John Deere 619 diesel. Kind of likes a lot of fuel. And also it's for my combining. And it's also, I do haul a little bit with a tractor and wagons right near. So it's all that except for my trucking for out and my propane. So I feel that's $11.28 an acre to do the whole thing. Somebody that's doing what I call recreational tillage is going to spend a lot more money than that, I believe.
The sheer equipment cost is enough to make a guy want to switch to no-till too, I think.
Are you yielding more, or are you yielding the same?
I think we're pretty comparable, honestly. I mean, I feel like when we switched to no-till, we dropped. And then the guys that were still doing full tillage system, we've crept back up there. Maybe in certain years, in certain environments, we will out yield them. But I know we're not any less.
On corn, my yields are way up. Soybeans in our area are a struggle because of that big pond we got over here in our location in the south part of the county. We get the wind and everything coming around the south end of the lake, and over the last 10 years, there's probably been 8 years that I've dried soybeans in the fall because you just can't wait for them to dry down. We get dark or gloomy skies. On my corn, overall average, I'm looking for dry land 200 plus. Irrigated, right now we're bumping that 200 to 300 range. I'm not too many conventional or minimum till guys around me are doing that. So,
That's 100 bushel range.
What's that?
Your corn yield 200 to 300.
Well, we're very unirrigated. Dry land is we like to be 200 plus on dry land.
Okay.
Irrigated 280, 300.
Yeah,
is where we're at right now.
What maturity of corn and soybeans do you plant?
Soybeans, I like to stay with mid group 2s. One time we were up to 3 1s and that, and it just didn't work out for us. Corn, I'll go anywhere from 99 to 110. I've got a dryer and I'm not afraid to use it. This year, our area, I dealt with a lot of smoke. We saw things that we never saw before. We took a test plot off. This was actually, it didn't give me a date on it, but it was in December. And it has 101 to 110 day varieties on it. At that point in time, all the moisture was 19. Didn't matter if it was 101 or if it was 110. Normal for us, when we get that late picking, we're putting it straight in the bin. It's, 15, 16, 17. This year, nothing would dry down. It got to a certain point and it just stayed there.
Did you find out that there wasn't much difference in your moisture as your corn, even if it was a 102 day or 109 day because of the snow?
No, right here there's a 110 day that's 20.8, and here's a 101 day that's 19.7.
Do you think that was because of the smoke?
Well, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. It and our soybeans really suffered. We had 2 fields that they zeroed. The crop insurance adjuster zeroed. I had irrigated beans that ran 38. Our first beans we planted the 1st of May were the best beans. We had dryland beans. The first field we planted went 70 dryland. From that point on, it just fell off a cliff. Every day from there on, it just was falling off a cliff. And the irrigated beans, it was on a field that would irrigate with a towable or traveler hard hose. And it's like, wait a minute here, what's going on? So I took one lane and like over a 3-week period, it took 4 inches. It didn't do nothing to it. It stayed the same as the rest of them. Totally got maybe knee high, and that was it. They just would not respond. We tried a little bit of everything to try and get them to respond, and they just wouldn't.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any of you 3 ever take one of your fields and chisel plow or deep rip half of it and see if you have any real advantage to the rip side versus the no-till side? I mean, if he's at $11 an acre, that's only 2 or 3 bushels of corn. I feel like you could probably get a yield boost off of a tillage pass that would be more than 3 bushels an acre of corn.
No, it would be you're defeating the purpose of being a no-till farmer if you're going to go do that. Because that chisel plow field, if you want to go back into no-till, you're going to be back to that 3 to 4 or 5 year transition. So, no, I kind of have to jump in with both feet and be committed to no-till.
To answer your question, there are years that ripping it would make a yield bump on a conventional till, for sure. But what Kate's saying is, we're looking for the long-term benefits of the no-till, whether it's water infiltration, improved organic matter, because there's lots of situations. You could take a no-till field that's been tilled for 10 years, and if you rip it up, you're going to have those 10 years of no-till, man, they're going to really benefit you when you do till it up.
Yeehaw.
It's going to be
that 1 year.
the best crop that field's ever raised. But just like breaking up a new field that was sod or something, it's about 3-4 years, and you're right back to everything else. You're done improving, and you're back to hoping you're not depleting, and just you're not rebuilding anything. You're not building organic matter. You're not trying to farm in a way to have less equipment or less help or whatever that is.
Thank you guys so much. That's a good note to end on, right?
Yes.